You may have noticed throughout my examples that I use hsl and hsla to define colors, and you may also know that the more common color markup is either hex colors or RGBA. There's a good reason I use hsla though, and once you know it, I'm pretty sure you'll start using it too. So here's a basic example. Using custom properties, I've set up a system where I can define a hue once and then create many different variations over that same color to create consistent color schemes. You can see over in the browser, I have that color scheme. It's this brownish yellow, and then it gets fainter and fainter. And if we look over in the code, you see what I've done is set up a custom property called base color, and I've set it to the value 42. And then I've set up 3 colors, color dark, color medium, and color light to correspond with each of these, dark, medium, and light. And inside these custom properties, I've used hsl, and then grabbed the base color, that's the one defined up here, and then I've set different values for the saturation and the lightness for these colors. So I'm using the same color throughout, and I'm just changing the saturation or the lightness to change these colors. And that means no matter what I do, we're still working within the same color space, and I never have to try to adjust my colors so they don't clash. Now here's the thing. This setup here is only possible using hsla. If you were trying to do the same with RGBA or hex, you would have to do a ton of math. So let me explain what's going on here. hsla stands for hue, saturation, lightness, and alpha. And the last one, alpha, is optional. You can choose to make this transparent or not. Here's how hsla works and why it's so interesting. The first value, the hue value, is the degree on the color wheel. So you go anywhere from 0, which is red, all the way through to 360, which is again at the top of the color wheel, which is red, and pick a color. So if you want green, you would say age value is 120. That's 120 degrees on the color wheel, and that will be the color throughout. So you pick a color using that first value, the hue color, and it will always correspond to this color wheel. The next value, S, is for saturation, and this is the percentage of color saturation. If you set that percentage to 100, you get full color. If you set it to 0, you get no color at all, so it's completely gray. And in that zone between 0 and 100 is where you'll find all the variations over that color. So if you want a really bright color, you go closer to 100%. If you want a very subtle color, you go closer to 0%. The L value is for lightness, and here you can imagine it's like projected light onto the color. So here, 0% is black, meaning there's no projected light at all, and there is no color as a result. So if you use hsla and you want to create a black, you just set the last value, the L value, to 0, and then you always get black. 50% is just in the middle, and 100% gives you full brightness, meaning the light is so bright that it's blacking out or it's whiting out everything, and you get full white. So again, if you want full white, you can just set any color to 100% L, and then you get full white. The final value, the optional A for transparency or alpha, is a value between 0 and 1. So here, 0 is completely transparent, there's no color at all, and 1 is completely opaque, and you have full color. What does this mean? Well, in simple terms, it means if you're working with a color scheme, all you need to do is set the first value, and then you can change this entire display. So right now it's set to 42 degrees, which is some sort of murky yellow color. If I change this value here to 0 and save it, you'll see now we're working in the red color space. If I change it to 120, now we're working in the green color space. If I set it to 240, now we're working in the blue color space. So using hsla, you can very quickly pick a color and then pick the color variation you want by varying either the saturation or the lightness or both. And it just makes it a lot easier to work with colors. Now you see this and you think, well, you could totally do that using RGBA or hex as well. And of course you could, but let me show you how it's different if you work with one of these other color spaces. So I'll set the background color for my entire demo area to an hsla color first. So I'll say background color, and then we'll set it to the same as what we have above, except I'll put in all the values so we can actually work with it. So I'll say hsla or hsl, and then we have 240, comma, 85%, comma, 50%, which is the default, and put a semicolon at the end and save that. So now we have this blue background color you see. Now in VS Code, if I want to change this to a different color value, I can just hover over it and then click on this bar at the very top. Now notice what happens underneath. I click on it, it goes from HSL to RGB, and then to hex, and then back to HSL again. Now pay close attention to what's happening here. When I'm on HSL, I'm saying the color is blue, so 240, the saturation is 85%, and the lightness is 50%. If I switch to RGB, I am saying in a red, green, blue color space, I have 19 values of blue, 19 values of green, and 236 values of blue. And what happens now is for each of the colors, you have a space between 0 and 240, and you have to pick the combination of the red, the green, and the blue to meet any color. Now imagine trying to pick a color using this color space by simply using a number. Or even worse, look at the hex number. The hex number here is actually a codification of that RGB value. So it's even more complex, and you simply cannot go into this and say, I'm just going to switch this quickly to green. You would have to open a color picker and then find what green is. But when you're working with HSL, you just go in and change the first value, and then you get the color you want automatically. Now, using HSLA takes some getting used to, but once you get the hang of it, you'll never want to use any other color because unlike hex and RGBA, HSLA actually makes sense to the way we humans think. All you have to remember is the color wheel and that you're placing a color on that color wheel. And like you've seen, if you have a color in hex or RGBA and you want to know what it is in HSLA, you just hover over the color, click on the bar at the top, and you can switch between all the color modes until you get the HSLA value for any color, and then you just start using that one.